Oh, we're the biggest disappointment I've ever had. Emily's words hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, and I watched Dr. Craig Young's pen pause mid-scribble on his notepad. 15 years of marriage, 2 kids who barely looked up from their phones when I walked through the door, and a mortgage that kept me chained to my advertising desk like some corporate slave. All of it reduced to one perfectly delivered insult from my yoga instructor wife, who thought downward-facing dog was a life philosophy. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I leaned back in the therapist's leather chair, feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settle on my shoulders like an old coat. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't going to apologize for existing. Fair enough, I said. The silence that followed could have powered a small town. Dr. Young looked between us like he was watching a tennis match played with hand grenades. Emily's perfectly sculpted eyebrows, courtesy of some overpriced salon downtown, shot up toward her hairline. "That's it?" she demanded. "That's all you have to say?" I studied my wife of 15 years, Emily Grafton, née Richardson, daughter of a real estate mogul who never let me forget I wasn't good enough for his princess. She sat there in her designer yoga pants and organic cotton top, radiating the kind of Zen superiority that came from spending $40 on a single meditation class. "What would you like me to say?" I asked. "That you're wrong? We both know I've been a disappointment since the day I couldn't afford the ring your father thought you deserved." Emily's face flushed red beneath her carefully applied makeup. "Don't you dare bring my father into this, Mark. This is about us, about how you've given up on everything, your career, your health, our marriage." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I turned to Dr. Young, who was scribbling furiously now like he was documenting the Titanic going down. "Doc, in your professional opinion, when someone tells you you're their biggest disappointment, is there really anywhere to go from there?" Dr. Young cleared his throat. "Mark, I think what Emily is trying to express is her frustration with—" "No," I interrupted, standing up. She expressed herself perfectly. Crystal clear, actually. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. Emily was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "Home? To pack?" The drive back to our house, correction, Emily's house, since her father had co-signed the mortgage, took exactly 12 minutes. 12 minutes to process 15 years of marriage, 2 kids who'd inherited their mother's talent for disappointment, and a wife who just handed me the cleanest divorce papers I could have asked for. I pulled into our driveway behind Emily's pristine white BMW, the one she'd insisted we needed because image matters in the yoga community. My 10-year-old Honda Civic looked like a faithful dog next to a show pony. Inside, the house was exactly as we'd left it an hour ago. Clean, organized, and completely devoid of any personality that wasn't Emily's. The walls were covered with inspirational quotes in flowing script. Breathe, namaste, live, laugh, love. I'd always wanted to add pay taxes to the collection, but Emily never appreciated my sense of humor. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, former bedroom, and pulled my old army duffel bag from the closet. Emily had been after me for years to throw it away, said it didn't match our aesthetic. Funny how useful ugly things could be. 20 minutes later, I had everything that mattered stuffed into 2 bags. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and a few books Emily had always complained about. I left my wedding ring on the bathroom counter next to a note written on the back of one of her yoga flyers. "Be well, Emily. You win." I was loading my car when our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came out to get her mail. She was 70-something with the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Going somewhere, Mark?" she asked. "Therapy breakthrough," I said, tossing my duffel into the back seat. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded like she understood everything. "About time?" The seaside motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it was clean, cheap, and most importantly, it didn't smell like Emily's lavender essential oils. I'd been there 3 days, living off takeout and planning my next move, when Emily finally called. "Mark, we need to talk." "I thought we did that, in therapy, with witnesses." "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just leave because of one argument." I almost laughed. One argument, like our marriage hadn't been slowly drowning for years in a sea of small disappointments and large silences. "Emily, you called me your biggest disappointment, in front of a licensed therapist. I'm pretty sure that qualifies as more than one argument." I was angry. People say things when they're angry. "Yeah, they do. They say what they really think." The line went quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing, probably doing one of those centering exercises she'd learned in her teacher training. "Mark, please, come home. We can work this out? I'll come by tomorrow to get the rest of my things. We can talk then. I hung up before she could respond. 3 days of sleeping alone had given me clarity I hadn't felt in years. Emily was right about one thing. I had given up. On my career, on our marriage, on myself. But she was wrong about why. The next morning, I drove to the house during Emily's usual yoga class schedule. She taught 3 classes on Thursdays at her studio downtown, which gave me a solid 2-hour window to pack up my home office. I was loading boxes of files into my car when I heard Emily's BMW pull into the driveway. She was early. Through the kitchen window, I watched her come through the front door, moving with that fluid grace she'd perfected over years of practice. "Mark?" she called. "In here," I answered from the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, still in her yoga clothes, hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Even angry and stressed, Emily was beautiful. It was one of the things that had attracted me to her 15 years ago, and one of the things that had kept me trying long after I should have given up. "We need to talk," she said. "So talk." She sat down at the kitchen table, the one we'd bought together when we first moved in. Her purse, some designer thing that cost more than my car payment, sat on the chair beside her. "I've been thinking about what you said, about giving up." "And? Maybe you're right. Maybe we both gave up." I studied her face, looking for tells. Emily was good at saying what she thought people wanted to hear. It was part of her yoga instructor training. Be supportive, be positive, be understanding. But her eyes always gave her away. "What changed your mind?" I asked. "I don't want to lose you, Mark. I don't want to lose us." Her phone buzzed, the one in her purse. She glanced at it, then quickly looked away, but not before I caught the flash of panic in her eyes. "Aren't you going to answer that?" "It's not important." It buzzed again and again. "Sounds important," I said. Emily reached for her purse, but her movement was too quick, too nervous. The bag tipped over, spilling its contents across the kitchen floor. Lip gloss, car keys, breath mints, and 2 phones. 2 phones. I looked at the devices, then at Emily, who was scrambling to collect everything like her life depended on it. "Why do you have 2 phones, Emily?" "It's for the studio, business calls." She was lying. I could tell by the way she wouldn't meet my eyes, the way her voice pitched slightly higher. After 15 years, I knew all her tells. "Let me see it." "Mark, don't be ridiculous." "If it's for business, you won't mind showing me." I reached for the second phone, but Emily was faster. She grabbed it and held it against her chest like it contained state secrets. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she said. "This paranoia, this suspicion. It's toxic, Mark." "You're right," I said. "It is toxic. Almost as toxic as lying to your husband." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving Emily sitting there with her 2 phones and her carefully constructed explanations. In the driveway, I sat in my car for a moment, processing what I'd just seen. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never known Emily to have a second phone. Business calls went to the studio's landline or her regular cell. There was only one reason someone kept a secret phone, and it wasn't for yoga classes. I pulled out my own phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Richie, it's Mark Grafton. Remember that favor you said you owed me? I'm ready to collect." Richie Santos had been my college roommate, best man at my wedding, and the kind of friend who showed up with beer and no questions when you called at midnight. He was also a private investigator who specialized in cases most PIs wouldn't touch: insurance fraud, cheating spouses, and what he called domestic reality checks. We met at the Driftwood, a bar down by the harbor that catered to locals who preferred their drinks strong and their conversations private. Richie was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and studying his phone with the intensity of a surgeon. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Thanks. Always knew you were a charmer." I ordered a whiskey and settled into the booth across from him. The Driftwood was exactly the kind of place Emily would never set foot in. Dim lighting, worn leather seats, and a bartender named Tara who'd been serving drinks since before I was born. "So," Richie said, "you want to tell me why you're suddenly interested in my professional services?" I told him about the therapy session, the separation, and the 2 phones. Richie listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on his phone. "How long has she had the second phone?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know. I just found out about it yesterday." "And you want me to find out who she's talking to?" "I want to know what I'm dealing with before I file for divorce." Richie leaned back in his seat, studying my face. "Mark, you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." She called me her biggest disappointment, Rich, in front of a therapist. I think bliss is off the table. He nodded slowly. "Okay, but I do this my way, and you don't interfere. No following her around, no confrontations, no amateur detective work. You pay me, I get you answers. Clean and simple. How long? Give me a week. Maybe less if she's sloppy. We shook hands across the table, and I wrote him a check for his retainer. It was money I couldn't really afford, but some things were worth going into debt for. 3 days later, Richie called. We need to talk. Same place, 1 hour. I found him in the same booth, but this time he wasn't alone. Tara, the bartender, was sitting across from him with a cup of coffee and a knowing look. Tara's got something you need to hear, Richie said. I slid into the booth next to him, suddenly nervous. Tara had been serving drinks at the Driftwood for 30 years. She knew everyone in town and heard everything worth hearing. Your wife, she said without preamble, has been coming in here? That stopped me cold. Emily at the Driftwood was like finding a vegetarian at a barbecue competition. When? Past 2 months, maybe 3. Always with the same guy. Tall, dark hair, drives a fancy truck. They sit in the corner booth, real cozy-like. Can you describe him? Tara glanced at Richie, who nodded. Jake Fallon. Runs that new development company, the one building those condos up on Harbor View. I knew the name. Fallon Development had been in the local papers for months, promising luxury waterfront living for people with more money than sense. Jake Fallon was their golden boy, the kind of smooth-talking developer who could sell ice to Eskimos. They seemed close? I asked. Tara snorted. Honey, I've been serving drinks since before you were born. I know the difference between business meetings and bedroom meetings. Those two weren't discussing real estate. Richie slid a manila envelope across the table. Photos, he said simply. I opened it with hands that weren't quite steady. The pictures were clear, well-lit, and completely devastating. Emily and Jake Fallon at a corner table, her hand on his arm. Emily and Jake in his truck, kissing like teenagers. Emily and Jake walking into the Harbor View Hotel, his hand on the small of her back. How long? I asked. Best I can tell, about 4 months, Richie said. Maybe longer, she's been careful, but not careful enough. I stared at the photos, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. 4 months. While I'd been going to therapy, trying to save our marriage, working late to pay for her yoga teacher training, Emily had been playing house with a real estate developer. There's more, Richie said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages. Emily's second phone to a number registered to Jake Fallon. Can't wait for tonight. Mark's working late again. The Harbor View suite is perfect, room 412. He's so clueless. Sometimes I feel bad for him. I read through them all, each message like a small knife between the ribs. The last one was from yesterday. Told him I want to work things out. Bought us some time. She's been playing you, Mark, Tara said gently. I'm sorry, honey, but that girl's been playing you for months. I closed the envelope and finished my whiskey in one burning gulp. The bar was quiet except for the low murmur of conversation and the clink of glasses. Normal people having normal conversations about normal problems. What do you want to do? Richie asked. I thought about Emily's speech in the therapist's office, her careful words about wanting to save our marriage, her panic when the second phone fell out of her purse. I want to know everything, I said. Bank accounts, credit cards, where they go, what they do, everything. Mark, she called me her biggest disappointment, Rich. Turns out she was just projecting. It took Richie another week to compile what he called the complete picture. Emily and Jake had been meeting regularly for 4 months, always at out-of-the-way places, always when I was working or traveling. They'd used her credit card, our credit card, to pay for hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and what appeared to be a romantic weekend in Boston. But the real surprise was in Emily's bank records. She's been moving money, Richie explained, spreading financial statements across the table at the Driftwood. Small amounts, nothing you'd notice day to day, but it adds up. $25,000 over the past 3 months. Where's it going? Jake Fallon's development company, specifically a down payment on a waterfront condo in his new Harbor View complex. I stared at the bank statements, trying to process what I was seeing. Emily had been systematically draining our joint account to buy a love nest with her boyfriend. The closing's scheduled for next Friday, Richie continued. Unit 3B, Harbor View, fully furnished. Your wife's been planning her exit strategy for months. Does Jake know she's married? Oh, he knows. I've got photos of him at your house, Mark. He's been there at least 3 times when you were out of town. The betrayal hit me in waves. It wasn't just the affair, it was the calculation behind it. Emily hadn't just fallen for another man. She'd been systematically planning to leave me while pretending to work on our marriage. What's your next move? Richie asked. I thought about it for a moment, watching Tara serve drinks to the evening crowd. Regular people with regular problems, not sitting in bars planning revenge against cheating wives and their real estate developer boyfriends. They want a new place together? I said finally. I think we should warm it up for them. The Harbor View complex was still under construction, which made it easy to get inside after hours. Richie had a cousin who worked security, and a $50 bill bought us an hour of selective blindness. Unit 3B was everything the brochures promised. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, granite countertops, hardwood floors, and enough square footage to house a small family. It was also completely empty, which made it perfect for what I had in mind. You sure about this? Richie asked as we set up our equipment. She wanted a fresh start, I said, connecting the wireless speakers to my phone. I'm just helping her make it memorable. We worked quickly and quietly. Paint bombs rigged to the front door, glitter cannons positioned in the bedroom, a hidden camera in the living room to capture the festivities, and my personal favorite, a Bluetooth speaker system that would let me provide commentary from anywhere in the building. What if they don't show up? Richie asked. Oh, they'll show up. Emily texted Jake this afternoon. Our first night in our new place. She's been looking forward to this for months. We finished just after midnight and retreated to Richie's car in the parking garage across the street. The Harbor View complex was dark except for security lighting, and the harbor was quiet except for the gentle sound of waves against the pier. How do you know they'll come tonight? Richie asked. Because Emily thinks I'm in Boston on a business trip. She made a big show of being sad about me leaving, said she'd miss me. Even packed me a lunch. At 9:47 p.m., Jake's silver pickup truck pulled into the Harbor View parking lot. Emily got out first, looking around nervously before Jake joined her. Even from across the street, I could see she was excited, practically bouncing on her toes as they walked toward the building entrance. Showtime, I said, pulling out my phone. They made it all the way to the third floor before the first paint bomb went off. Through the security camera feed on my phone, I watched Emily's face go from excitement to confusion to horror as bright red paint splattered across the pristine white walls of the hallway. What the hell? Jake's voice came through clearly on the audio feed. That's when I triggered the glitter cannons. The explosion of silver and gold glitter filled the apartment like a disco ball had exploded. Emily screamed, Jake cursed, and I activated the speaker system. Welcome home, lovebirds, my voice echoed through the apartment. Hope you like the decorating. I went with a theme I call Cheating Bastards. Emily spun around, glitter in her hair, paint on her dress, looking for the source of my voice. Surprise, honey, I continued. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? $25,000 for a love nest? Our money, Emily. Our joint account. Jake was trying to wipe paint off his shirt, leaving red streaks across the expensive fabric. Who is this? How did you get in here? Oh, Jake, we haven't been properly introduced. I'm Mark Grafton, Emily's biggest disappointment, also known as the guy whose wife you've been screwing for the past 4 months. Emily's face went white beneath the paint and glitter. She looked directly at the hidden camera like she could see me through it. Mark, please, let me explain. Explain what? The hotel rooms? The romantic dinners? The fact that you've been planning to leave me while pretending to work on our marriage? I triggered the second wave of paint bombs. Blue this time because I'd always been thorough. The good news is, you two can still live here, I announced through the speakers. The down payment's already been made with my money. The bad news is, the cleanup's going to be a snake. Jake grabbed Emily's hand and started pulling her toward the door. We're leaving, now. Don't forget to tip the decorator on your way out, I called after them. Through the camera, I watched them flee the apartment, covered in paint and glitter, their romantic evening reduced to a Jackson Pollock nightmare. Emily was crying, Jake was cursing, and I was laughing for the first time in months. Feel better? Richie asked. Getting there, I said, watching Jake's truck speed out of the parking lot. But we're not done yet. The video of Emily and Jake's paint and glitter surprise went viral within hours. Not nationally viral, but small-town viral, which was somehow worse. Richie's cousin in security had accidentally left the building's surveillance system running, and someone had accidentally uploaded the footage to a local Facebook group called Harbor Town Happenings. By morning, it had been shared 847 times. I was having coffee at the Driftwood when my phone started ringing. Emily, of course. Mark, you have to take it down. Take what down? Don't play dumb. The video, everyone's seen it. My yoga students, my friends, my parents, everyone. I didn't post any video, Emily. Maybe you should be more careful about where you have your romantic rendezvous. This is harassment. I could call the police. For what? Decorating a condo you bought with my money. Good luck with that. She hung up, but the calls kept coming. Sienna, Emily's best friend and fellow yoga instructor. Harper, her social media-obsessed yoga buddy. Even Emily's mother, Patricia Richardson, who had never liked me but was apparently willing to overlook that in the face of public humiliation. Mark, Patricia's voice was ice cold. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, but this vendetta against Emily needs to stop. Vendetta? Patricia, your daughter spent $25,000 of my money on a condo for her boyfriend. I'm just making sure she gets her money's worth. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. For 4 months? That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle choice. I hung up on her too and ordered another coffee. Tara slid it across the bar with a grin. Heard you've been busy, she said. Just redecorating. Half the town's talking about it. Other half's sharing the video. That afternoon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Jake. I showed it to Richie, who was helping me move the last of my belongings out of the house. Emily had changed the locks, but she'd forgotten about the spare key I'd hidden in the garden shed 2 years ago. You going to meet him? Richie asked. Why not? I'm curious what he has to say. We agreed to meet at Harbor Park, a public place with plenty of witnesses. Jake was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. He looked different without his usual confidence, smaller somehow, like the paint and glitter had washed away some of his swagger. Mark, he said as I approached. Jake, how's the new place working out? His jaw tightened. We need to discuss this situation like adults. Which situation? The one where you've been sleeping with my wife, or the one where she used my money to buy you a condo? Emily told me you were separated. When? Before or after you started screwing her in hotel rooms? Jake stood up, and for a moment I thought he might take a swing at me. He was taller than me, probably stronger, but he was also a businessman who'd never been in a real fight in his life. Look, he said, I know you're angry. I get it. But this thing between Emily and me, it's real. We love each other. Congratulations. Love's expensive, isn't it? $25,000 just for the down payment. She's going to pay you back? With what money? Her yoga classes? Your development company that's been hemorrhaging cash for 6 months? That got his attention. Jake's face went pale, and I realized he didn't know I'd been digging into his finances too. That's right, I continued. Richie's very thorough. Harborview Development is 3 months behind on contractor payments, 2 months behind on permits, and about 6 weeks away from bankruptcy. Guess Emily picked the wrong sugar daddy. Jake sat back down heavily. How do you know all that? Public records. Amazing what you can find when you actually look. I sat down beside him, close enough that he couldn't ignore me, but far enough that it didn't look threatening to anyone watching. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. Yeah, you're going to break up with my wife, you're going to tell her the condo deal is off, and you're going to stay the hell away from my family. And if I don't? Then I send everything I know about your company's finances to the Harbor Town Gazette. How do you think your investors will react when they find out their golden boy can't pay his bills? Jake stared out at the harbor for a long moment. A fishing boat was coming in with the day's catch, seagulls circling overhead like vultures. She won't go back to you, he said finally, even if I'm out of the picture. That's my problem, not yours. He stood up and walked away without another word. I sat on the bench for a while, watching the fishing boat unload its catch. Normal people doing normal work, not sitting in parks blackmailing their wives' boyfriends. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Jake told me what you said. This isn't over. I texted back, You're right. It's not. Emily's yoga studio, Mindful Movements, was located in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and bamboo floors and inspirational quotes painted on the walls in flowing script. I'd helped her design the space 3 years ago, back when we were still pretending our marriage was worth saving. I walked in during her Thursday evening class, Restorative Flow for Busy Professionals. 15 people in expensive workout clothes, stretching and breathing and trying to find their inner peace. Emily was at the front of the room, leading them through a series of poses, her voice soft and soothing. Now breathe into the stretch, she was saying. Let go of any tension, any negativity you might be carrying. I stood in the back of the room and waited. It took her almost 5 minutes to notice me, and when she did, her carefully controlled expression cracked just slightly. Continue with your practice, she told the class. I'll be right back. She walked to the back of the room, her movements still graceful, but her eyes hard as flint. What are you doing here, Mark? We need to talk. I'm teaching a class. Then we'll talk after. I'll wait. She glanced at her students, who were pretending to focus on their breathing while obviously listening to every word. Fine. Wait in the office. Emily's office was a small room behind the main studio, decorated with the same inspirational aesthetic as the rest of the space. crystals, plants, a Buddha statue, and a framed photo of Emily with some famous yoga instructor whose name I'd forgotten. I sat in the chair across from her desk and waited. Through the thin walls, I could hear Emily's voice guiding the class through the final poses of their session. Take a moment to appreciate your practice tonight. Honor the work you've done, the growth you've achieved. 20 minutes later, the class filed out, chatting quietly about dinner plans and weekend workshops. Emily came into the office and closed the door behind her. Well, she said, not sitting down, Jake broke up with you. That's not your business anymore. The $25,000 you stole from our joint account is my business. Emily's face flushed red. I didn't steal anything. That's my money too. To spend on a condo for your boyfriend? To invest in my future. Our future, if you'd bothered to ask. Our future. Emily, you've been screwing another man for 4 months. What future did you think we had? She finally sat down, but perched on the edge of her chair like she was ready to run. I made a mistake, she said quietly. I know that. But what you did, humiliating me in front of the whole town, that was cruel. Cruel? You want to talk about cruel? How about pretending to work on our marriage while you were planning your escape? How about using our money to buy a love nest? How about calling me your biggest disappointment while you were cheating on me? I never meant for it to happen with Jake. It just did. For 4 months. That's not something that just happens, Emily. That's a choice. A series of choices. She was crying now, tears running down her cheeks and dripping onto her yoga mat. I felt invisible, she said. In our marriage, in our life. You were always working, always tired, always somewhere else. Jake made me feel alive again. So you decided to steal my money to run away with him? I was going to pay you back. With what? Jake's broke, Emily. His company's going under. That's why he broke up with you. He can't afford a girlfriend right now, let alone a wife. Emily's tears stopped abruptly. What are you talking about? I pulled out my phone and showed her the financial records Richie had compiled. Bank statements, credit reports, contractor liens, a complete picture of Jake Fallon's financial collapse. Harborview Development is bankrupt, I said. Has been for months. Jake was using your money to keep the lights on, not to build your dream home. Emily stared at the documents, her face going through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, horror. He said he loved me, she whispered. Maybe he did, but he loved your money more. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands folded in her lap. What happens now? She asked finally. Now? Now you figure out how to pay me back $25,000, and we get divorced. Mark, please, can't we try to work this out? Go back to therapy, start over? I looked around her office at all the inspirational quotes and spiritual decorations, at the woman I'd been married to for 15 years who'd become a stranger. Emily, 3 weeks ago you called me your biggest disappointment. Today I found out you've been cheating on me for 4 months and stealing my money to run away with your boyfriend. What exactly is there to work out? She didn't have an answer for that. I stood up and walked to the door, then turned back. The divorce papers will be filed tomorrow. You can contest it if you want, but I've got photos, bank records, and hotel receipts. Your choice. I left her sitting in her office, surrounded by inspirational quotes about letting go of negativity. Sometimes life had a sense of humor. The divorce proceedings took 3 months, during which Emily tried everything from tears to threats to get me to change my mind. She hired a lawyer, her father's lawyer, naturally, who tried to argue that I'd emotionally abused her by orchestrating a public humiliation campaign. The judge wasn't impressed. Mrs. Grafton, he said during our final hearing, you used marital funds to purchase real estate with a man who wasn't your husband. Your emotional state, while regrettable, doesn't change the facts. Emily was awarded half of our remaining assets, minus the $25,000 she'd spent on Jake's condo. I got the house, what was left of it after she'd stripped it of everything valuable, and my freedom. Jake Fallon disappeared from town about a week after the divorce was finalized. Harborview Development declared bankruptcy, leaving a half-finished condo complex and a lot of angry investors. The unit Emily had bought was sold at auction for $15,000. She never got a penny back. I was having a celebratory drink at the Driftwood when Emily walked in. She looked different, thinner, older, like the past few months had aged her in ways that yoga couldn't fix. She spotted me at the bar and walked over, moving with none of her old confidence. Mark, she said. Emily. Can I sit? I gestured to the empty stool beside me. Tara raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. I wanted to apologize, Emily said after ordering a glass of wine. For everything, the affair, the money, the things I said in therapy. Okay. That's it? Just okay? I turned to look at her. This woman I'd loved for 15 years and been married to for almost as long. What do you want me to say, Emily? That I forgive you? That I understand? That we can be friends? I don't know. Something. You called me your biggest disappointment in front of a therapist. After 4 months of cheating on me and stealing my money, what response were you expecting? Emily stared into her wine glass. I was angry, frustrated. I felt trapped. So you decided to have an affair and steal my money to run away with your boyfriend. I made mistakes, I know that. But what you did, the video, the public humiliation, what I did, Emily, I decorated a condo you bought with my money. Everything else, the video, the social media, the gossip, that was just people reacting to your choices. It destroyed my reputation, my business. I had to close the studio. That's unfortunate. She looked at me like I was a stranger. You've changed. You used to be kind, compassionate. I used to be a lot of things. Naive, mostly. Emily finished her wine and stood up. I hope you're happy, Mark. I hope this was all worth it. You know what? I am happy. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. She walked out of the driftwood without looking back. Tara refilled my drink without being asked. You really happy? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. The divorce was final. Emily was out of my life, and I was living in a small apartment downtown, starting over at 42. I had a job I didn't hate, friends who actually liked me, and no one to disappoint but myself. Yeah, I said. I really am. 6 months later, I heard Emily had moved back in with her parents and was working at a fitness center in the next town over. Jake Fallon had apparently moved to Florida, leaving behind a trail of unpaid debts and broken promises. I was sitting in my apartment one evening, reading a book Emily would have hated, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mark? This is Dr. Young, from the therapy sessions. Dr. Young, how can I help you? I wanted to apologize. I should have seen what was happening, should have recognized the signs. Emily was manipulating the sessions, using them to justify her behavior. It's not your fault, Doc. She was manipulating all of us. Still, I wanted you to know. What she said to you that day about being disappointed, that was projection. She was talking about herself. I figured that out eventually. You handled it better than most people would have. Did I? Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. Dr. Young was quiet for a moment. Mark, in 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of marriages end. Most people either become victims or villains. You chose a third option. Which was? You chose to stop being disappointed. After he hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about that. Emily had called me her biggest disappointment, and she'd been right. I had been disappointing, to her, to myself, to the man I used to be. But I wasn't disappointing anymore. I was free. The end final character count. 61,547 characters. Stvorino. 2025, 10 to 14, 10:54, 17.